Okay, first we need to establish some things. Let's see what we've already and how this looks. This is thrown together really, really roughly. It makes something much, much better, I'm sure, but for now this accomplishes what's necessary. Uh, these colored ticks are the swing timers. Green is main hand and red is offhand. And these white ticks are approximately half-second timing bars. Like if you proper stagger would be between these two ticks. And it's just done by dividing, it's really rough, by the weapon speed. I'm using 2 axes of the deep woods, and we apply Rockbiter there. I put Rockbiter on just the main hand, and the only reason for that is just it makes it a little easier down here to see the difference between the main hand hits and the offhand hits, because the main hand does a lot more damage. So that sort of should describe the visual information. Again, this is the main hand, this is the offhand. And you see right now they are totally out of sync. Like this is the worst case scenario, basically. You're not getting the flurry benefits, and Wind Fury is kind of just a crapshoot with this, but the flurry is the main problem. Anytime you attack, you start attacking in melee range, you will end up in that kind of bad stagger. So for starters, you want to try to avoid doing that if possible. Sometimes, of course, you won't be able to, but we'll get to some of that later. So this is sort of this demonstrates like the worst case scenario. In fact, this even shows offhand before main hand, so it's like this is as bad as it gets. So the next thing we got to establish here is if you start attacking from out of range, you right-click the targets, even if you're not in combat, just as long as you right-click, you've started attack on the target, right-click or slash start attack, whatever, anything that enables attack. Even if you haven't hit it yet, even if nobody's in combat, anything, as long as you have a target you can click on, or the target you're going to attack, like a boss, while getting ready to pull or moving into position or whatever. As long as you have started your attack from out of range, any arbitrary length of time, once you move into range, the swings will always be close to each other. It'll always be one of 3 situations. Either a stagger with main hand first, which is the ideal, a stagger with offhand first, which is still synced for the purposes of flurry charges, but it's worse for Wind Fury, or in perfect full sync, where you get the flurry benefits, but it's a crapshoot, it's a coin flip on whether you will be swinging with your main hand or your offhand. In this case, I got right out of the gate, just totally randomly got the perfect sync stagger. I'm not doing anything at this point. If this is what happened, if I went to started the fight like this, and this was the swing timings that I got, I could just stick with it. If you, but it could be one of the others. If I were to disengage and re-engage and then try again, and maybe a different timing. So this time it's like the same stagger, but this time flipped. So main offhand is first, main hand is second, which is again still better than being totally out of sync. Or out of the stagger range, because you'll get the flurry benefits, but not the benefits to Wind Fury. And I could keep doing this until it shows the full sync. But I mean, if someone doesn't believe me that it can do that, there you go. See, when this is one single line like this, they're both in full sync. If you are able to see the combat log, like here it was main hand, right? Currently it's main hand first. By such a higher damage on the first swing, but sometimes it seems to go in and out of that. It's sort of, again, it's like a coin flip. Sometimes you can kind of get synced, and this would be just fine, but you couldn't really be watching your combat log and stuff like this during an actual fight. Maybe there'd be a weak aura that could figure it out, but it doesn't really matter. So that shows that there's a bunch of different sort of variables. Attacking at melee range will always start with a totally out of lockstep, stagger, and attacking from out of range and moving into range will always create the proper stagger timing, but it may not create the right weapon priority. So another thing you can do, even though you always will end up in that sort of situation, as far as you may even automatically get the perfect stagger, and there's no reason to do anything differently. If you have begun attacking the target, just like this, you can be out of combat, it doesn't matter, and you've just right-clicked it. If you hard cast anything, this is just a rank 1 healing wave, now you are in perfect sync. Both weapons are swinging at exactly the same time. You can't see it yet, but even if you wait, as long as you cast one spell all the way through, then you're in perfect sync right now. If I move into range, they're going to be hitting at the same time. See, one line. So there's really no reason you need to do that if you're starting a fight, since as long as you right-click the target from out of range and have at least a couple seconds before you engage, you'll end up in a situation where you're properly staggered anyway. But it shows you that here's all the different scenarios for how your weapons can be in and out of sync and proper stagger ranges. And so even being fully synced like this is still good because you still get the flurry benefits. But you can see this time that we had offhand first and main hand, then it switched to main hand, offhand. It's alternating back and forth, which is ultimately this, on average, the same as having different speeds. You'll theoretically have 50-50 for Wind Fury. But we can do better than that. There's no reason to flip the coin. And this is when this macro comes in. You can see right now that the weapons are in full sync, and I demonstrated you can always force that. You can do it when you're in melee range. I mean, you don't want to, because once you're already in combat, casting a spell is losing DPS, but it's an option. The point being, as far as starting like this, the macro, once this synced timer bar reaches right around here, there's leeway. It's really not super precise. Anywhere sort of around halfway, slightly past. When I press this macro, now they're staggered, and this is within the proper amount of time. It works consistently like that every single time. Even better is that if you start attacking from out of range, it may take a few tries to get this right here. That worked first time. Here you see staggered, but the offhand is first, which you don't want. If you still press this macro, when the green main hand bar is in that same spot, it will fix itself. Now they've swapped, and main hand is first, and you're perfectly staggered and synced. It's that simple. And the macro is nothing magical. It's very simple. It just is a deselect the target and reselect it and start attacking. The reason I picked targeting myself instead of simply clearing the target, it doesn't really matter. Either does exactly the same thing. I tested both macros work the same way. The only thing at all, this is a very low chance, but if you were in a fight and you deselected a target and got hit by AoE damage or from something else, it would automatically set your target to that. So it doesn't really matter. But this works and doesn't have any sort of other negative benefits or drawbacks. So as long as you can create into the fight, into a scenario where you are already close to sync and you're staggered, full sync or staggered, you can use that macro at that timing. It's quite consistent and easy to do it. I'm sure it'd be even easier with proper weak auras. These are really rough things I just threw together. But if you find yourself in that worst case scenario, through whatever sort of target switching that you might end up, like, let's just say you end up in this scenario here where you're totally out of sync. There's two ways to fix this. You can do, as I mentioned earlier, simply cast whatever your fastest spell is. Like a rank 1 healing wave, it'll reset your swing timers completely, and it'll put you into perfect sync. And then you press the macro right there when you go past the middle, and you're staggered. If you are trying to not lose any DPS at all, you can there's still the turning method. You can try to turn away from the boss. But if the boss is moving around, there's other things you need to avoid, all those sort of things that could always make it more difficult. You can use the macro, even in this scenario, to create the proper sync, but you have to press it more than once. There's probably an exact time that's the best, but I found if I press it the first time when the main hand there is in this really early part of the bar, it'll change the timing, and then I click it again at the usual time when the green bars are right there, and after doing those two different presses, now you'll be in stagger again. So we can try it out here. Next time the main hand enters that thing, press it right now. And now you see they're much closer together. I could have done it right now, but it doesn't matter how long you wait. And then right now, right there, press it again. There you go, staggered. That's all it takes. That the macro means you can always put yourself in the proper sync and stagger from any scenario, and when you're really comfortable with the timing, you don't have to wait extra swings like that. Not that it matters all that much in the grand scheme of things, but you can press it right off the bat, the very first swing, if you're ready for it. And there you go. I tested it with 2.5 speed weapons also. I don't have any 2.6s on the beta, but if it works at 2.7 and 2.5, I don't know why it wouldn't work with 2.6. Someone else can surely test it. Just as a side note, when you're attempting to maintain this sort of timing and you need to change targets, if they're far away, there's not a whole lot you can do. When you move well out of range and the swing timers finish, when you go back in, they may be in the same position they were before, or they may have changed. In this case, it's the same. But they will also, if they have changed, they are usually still in that stagger pattern to where you can use the macro one time to fix them. If you need to change targets, like say trash targets where something's very close to you, ideally you'd want to change targets between swings, and it'll always stay exactly the same. If I just move here targets, it just keeps going. If I was out of range when it was supposed to finish, then it changes the timing. Now you see it's a bit too far. If you end up in that scenario, just press the macro right there when the green is past the middle. Sometimes it takes a couple tries if they're out of sync like that. Okay, yeah, if they're too far out of sync, you got to do the early one and then press it again. There you go. So if they are too far apart, even if they're kind of close, like it was that time, you need to do the 2 macro version, clicking it once here and then again once here. But it does mean, you know, in very fast-paced fights with lots of target switching, there's only so much you'll be able to do. But any scenario where you're able to spend most of your time on the boss, using this macro with, you know, the proper timing will give you the proper sync and stagger every time. So there you go.